Good evening, everybody. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 2 of the Case King Pro Series of Season 15. And we are taking to the incredible, legendary, historic circuit of Suzuka after the season opener held at Watkins Glen last week kicks off in fine fashion. A dramatic and tense race all the way to the very end, but by less than a second, Eric Del Fanta rose to the top step of the podium at the incredibly technical and hardcore Watkins Glen racetrack. It is an unforgiving circuit. We saw all the thrills and spills that we are used to seeing in this incredible series, and it delivered in bucket loads once again. But the Italian driver in the Honda was able to conquer that circuit, despite being put under immense amounts of pressure from both Nicholas Huben and Luke Whitehead over the course of that race. And of course, Florian Duacop, the pole man, for back-to-back races, took pole at the end of Season 14, took pole at the beginning of Season 15, but unfortunately neither of those races quite managing to be closed out into a second all-time victory in his previous history of this series. But he is quite clearly also a man on form and could be looking to contend at the pointy end of the grid potentially today as well. We will have to wait and see. Now, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, for what we saw that's in the opening part of the stream, unfortunately, did not have the timer on stream. Now, I am in a little bit of a compromised situation in terms of internet. Unfortunately, I've had a bit of a bizarre situation take place the last couple of days and running things through the Wi-Fi at the moment. So certain overlays, and also I think the stream may be a little bit choppy at the moment based on one comment that I saw. So I may look to try to drop the bitrate just a little bit, hopefully alleviate some of that strain from my internet that is trying its best to keep up with everything. Do give me some feedback in the chat as well as we go along. So hopefully we can try to make it through this evening and enjoy what should be an incredible bit of action over the course of tonight. I can see the fan club for Mr. Timu Karppinen in the server once again. Of course, back with the Bentley in that car. And it is a wonderful, wonderful beast of a machine. And he drove exceptionally well in that one last week at Watkins Glen. In the tricky mixed conditions, the rain playing havoc, of course, at that circuit. And in the Bentley, a car that is well known not to particularly be able to adapt in those conditions, he drove very nicely indeed and managed to score some fantastic points inside the top 10 for the opening round of the season. So we've got people already cheering on this man again, and apparently we've even got a Nissan in this race as well, so the Japanese outfit on home turf joining the few Hondas that we have in the field as well, so I'm sure there'll be some people cheering on that car as well on the grid. We'll find out who that is in the field very, very shortly. And in terms of the bets as to who might be the driver to take pole position and maybe even the race win. Now, we did some predictions last week, and I must admit, I got them very wrong, but I'm going to kind of forgive myself slightly because I did not quite see the level of intensity of the rain being as much as it was, and that rather did change how things looked, because the Mustang exceptionally strong in a straight line, but really very much hampered by those wet conditions. Going into today, it's going to be a bit of a tricky one. You know, I would have to say we've seen the likes of both Luke Whitehead and Grant Carreras be very quick here in the past, but it looks like it could be slightly elevated temperatures, which may start to hamper the likes of the Porsche in the hands of the British driver. So, where would I put my money? I would say pole position. I think the Luke Whitehead can very likely do something special, but in race trim, I think he could well end up coming under pressure from some of these other cars. Maybe the Ferraris, maybe even, of course, Nicholas Huben. That Aston Martin tends to handle its tyres pretty well, and he was very racy at the end stages of last week. So I have to wait and see how it all kicks off. Drivers are doing a little bit of final practice at the moment. We shall see exactly how those moments are going on for them. Of course, we so often discuss, how important it is to use these final moments of your session before you head into qualifying to best effect. You kind of have two choices. Do you look to either optimize for race trim conditions, or do you look to try to make sure that you have everything absolutely underneath you as best possible in that qualifying session and try to get yourself towards the pointy end of the grid? Both of those things have merit, and they can very quickly turn on their heads depending on what sort of situation we run into in the opening lap of the race. And why don't we use the other chicane of the layout? And it's a good question, Kylo. Actually, it's definitely quite an exciting one. It's, I think, a little bit almost the same as kind of a Barcelona, that different, that alternative layout that we saw for the likes of the MotoGP circuit for a while. Of course, it's made its way over to a couple of other series now, using that kind of that fast double right at the end of the lap, and definitely is pretty speedy, pretty interesting for that one. So yeah, I kind of would tend to agree. It would be an interesting modification for this circuit. And it's unfortunate, of course, so Nicholas Huben not with us for today in the server. Hopefully we'll have to see how he looks to come back to the series. Of course, there is 2 drop rounds over the course of this championship, so it does mean that he can still very much be in the championship fight to the end if he is present for 10 out of those 12 rounds. But of course, you can't always necessarily count on those 10 races, because it makes it a little bit more tricky. If you do have races that don't go quite so well, then it's an unfortunate compromise to your championship campaign. But with things as they stand in the early stages of this championship, still all very much to play for. And interestingly enough, right now, the Bentley of Team Riccardo, I'm sure to the delight of everyone in the chat, topping the timing sheets ahead of Jaid Hutchinson, the Canadian, who so often has been formidable in race trim. He's a race winner, multiple-time race winner, in fact, in the Pro Series. And he knows how to deliver the goods. And the number 10 car following the pace of the Bentley driver. And look at that, there he is, in that beautiful Nissan. And Jaid Hutchinson, he has sometimes taken some creative car choices, but he always finds a way to extract pace out of them. I think, of course, last week we went on board with the likes of the Bentley. We also went on board with the Mustang for the first time, as it joins us here in Season 15 as an option for drivers to contest with. It's very rare that we get to see the Nissan in the top splits of the Case King Pro Series, but fantastic to have it here with us tonight. And we will go on board to listen to that one. As I recall, definitely had one of the best gear shift noise. It's a proper clunk of engagement, and a really kind of satisfying mechanical sounds. I can't wait to hop into qualifying. Progresses. Pizzas are out for those sitting home ready to watch this evening of action. And yeah, Haunted, interesting suggestion on that front. Yeah, what if we just took away the chicane entirely? And just imagine flat out, pretty much flat out all the way from the exit of Spoon Curve through 130R and then through the final corner as well. That would certainly be an interesting one. There's some interesting corner names around here and some less interesting ones as well. The lack of creativity at the likes of the first couple of corners, which is just summarized as first turn. Those in charge of those decisions for naming the circuit. I mean, they certainly hit the brief. You can't say they did it wrong. But yeah, there's a couple of ones that leave a little bit to be desired. But of course, it all makes up for it with the incredible layout that we have around here at Suzuka. It is a proper driver circuit, and I'm sure it is going to deliver some fantastic racing for this evening. Qualifying then underway and ready to go. We'll see who's going to be the first one out on circuit. I do believe it is going to be a Mr. George Boothby. Of course, this man has been contesting at the pointy end of the Case King Pro Series time after time in seasons gone. He is the winningest driver in Pro Series history, but has never been quite able to get that final few points across the line to take the championship. And of course, this season, he'll be looking, trying to contest for it once again. Not the best start for him, at the beginning of this one. Watkins Glen barely managed to hold on to the top 10 and was the second of the Mustangs. Marco Bischoff managing to start his championship campaign, the two-time Pro Series champion, with a P8 finish. But both those drivers, I'm sure, will be looking to try to move up the grid somewhat. I believe, if memory serves correctly, that this is looking to be 100% dry for this evening. Of course, like I say, the Mustang was somewhat caught out in terms of raw pace and potential of Watkins Glen with that weather, despite the monstrous straight line speed it had all the way from turn 1 to turn 5. But perhaps here at Suzuka, we've got some long flat-out sections, the hill as well. That torque in the front end of that car is going to be absolutely vital for lap time around here. But it's all going to be whether or not you can hook it up in some of the twisty parts of the circuit as well. And absolutely, yeah, kind of criminal that George Boothby hasn't got a Pro Series title to his name. But sometimes that is the way that it can go. You can have some absolutely mighty campaigns from certain drivers, but the margins in this championship have and always will be very, very tight. Of course, the fantastic matchmaking system that we do have here in the Pro Series, and of course across the entirety of low fuel motorsport, does mean that we are always in for a treat with fantastic racing every single time we go out. Jade Hutchinson, like I say, he'll be the man that we go on board with for the opening lap of qualifying. It's only fair, really, to have the Japanese outfit that we don't have all too often lead us around for the first time of this Japanese circuit. You see, backed behind Michael Frey at the moment, and he'll be wanting to get a bit of a shift on sooner rather than later. As, of course, want to keep your tyres in a nice window. Both temperature and pressure, very, very important. Tyre pressures have a huge effect on a couple of different factors. Overall cornering response, if you have higher pressures in the car, you're going to tend to have a car that responds better in some of those kind of quick changes of direction and in those higher speed corners. But lower pressures will sometimes give you a bit more ultimate grip. You want to keep them in a good window for temperature, make sure the rubber's nice and sticky but isn't overheating. And then, of course, also as another little element of preparation, that you need those brakes in a good place as well. The opening braking zone for Suzuka, maybe not the most intense of braking zones, but certainly is one that will keep you on a knife edge. So, bearing on down towards the first turn, then clipping at that apex, starting to work his way down the gears, use the engine braking to the advantage and that little bit of camber in the circuit to hook it up over the curve, use the exit curve, and now start to swing your way through the S's. Take a big chunk of curve through the first apex, a little bit on the second. Got to be careful not to hook that curve too much, otherwise it will start to over-rotate that car. Now patience here, get the car back to the right-hand side of the circuit, open up the exit through Dunlop curve and carry that momentum up over the hill, over the crest, and then prepare yourself for the first and second Degner. In towards turn 8 we go. Very, very quick entry to the corner. You can take a big chunk of curve in these GT cars, and then trying to be careful of those track limits through all of those apexes. Jade, perfect example through there, maximising every little ounce of track he's got through the kink of 10, hard braking zone into 11, hooking into the camber of turn 11, but most importantly, getting that squared off on the exit. George Boothby tops time sheets for the time being as the opening laps are being done as we wind away now through 300R of 12, and prepare yourself for the double apex or spoon curve, using a little bit of AstroTurf on the right-hand side of the circuit to maximise the speed through the corner. Patience in the middle parts, and then get it all squared up. Use the AstroTurf on the exit, back on the power, and now let this Nissan sing as it makes its way on down towards 130R. We'll be closing here. It'll be easy flat through. We'll take a bit of a listen. Oh, I say that, there was a lift then, you can see. Maybe Nissan not quite enough downforce aboard that car. Of course, I think actually thinking about it, the Porsche was one of the few cars that was able to go flat through there, but the Nissan absolutely burbling its way all over the curves on the final part of the lap. Gets a little bit of a run towards the line and see what the opening bit from Hutchinson is going to be. As he crosses the line, he's good enough for P5 in the Nissan. Not too shabby on that front whatsoever. Also, big thank you there to Draco for the subscription. It does go a long way, the additional support and helping out the hidden heroes that make all of this possible. It's wonderful to have all of you here joining for another evening of incredible action, and those extra little bits of generous support are always very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Draco, for that one. George Boothby then on his second lap at the moment. You can see absolutely maximising the track limits as they head through 130R. He's just, I think, actually he's invalidated the lap through that first apex of the Casio Triangle chicane. Meanwhile, his teammate, ex-teammate, Grant Scarecca, of course, moved out of the Veloce esports group, went over to Scuderia Ferrari, and of course now, as a result, is in that 296. Jade Hutchinson absolutely on a blinder of a lap at the moment. He briefly was going purple. He's still going very, very quickly as it stands. 3/10 up is the Nissan. And what a shocker for the books this would be if he was to top the time machines. Last week's race winner, Del Fanta, moves himself up into P5. The reigning champion, Amadeo Castorino, was briefly P4, gets moved down by Leon Burns. Again, impressive stuff from the Renwelton Esports driver. As we see these cars progressing to the end of lap. Hutchinson just a little bit further up the road than Grant Scarecca, and he is absolutely flying. The Canadian driver, he knows how to win races in the Pro Series. Hard on the brakes once again. Doesn't make the same mistake as George Boothby. It's looking very good. Oh, a little bit wide on the exit, according to soon. The commentator curse strikes again. He will look to improve. It's going to be very marginal to the line. What's it going to be for the number 10 car? Shortest run that he can make. And he does top the time machines. The first man into the point 2. But what does he do? Karekas in the Lithuanian driver. A champion in his own right. Mac into pole position. We know just how good this man can be over the course of one lap. It's a little bit of time since we've seen him really at the pointy end of the field, but he's looking quick, darling, once again. That Ferrari is going to be beautifully planted, especially through the opening section. It will look after its tyres as well. Might be a bit tricky to make overtakes with that car. So grid position is going to be vital. Philip Manar, very, very wide through Spoon Curve. Manages to just about keep it all together, though. And as we keep on pushing along with this Mustang, he is going purple as it stands. The Mustang roaring with that V8 under the bonnet into 130R. We go big speed here. Got to be careful not to push the limits too much. Beautifully negotiated from the South African. Hard on the brakes. Does he square up the exit a little bit tidier, a little bit better than we saw from Hutchinson a moment ago? The V8, the Ford, oh, it's a little bit of the same error, and it runs him wide on the exit. He is still going immensely quickly, though. It's not going to be easy for Correctors to hold on to this as the V8 makes his way towards the line, and it's Philip Manar by 600ths of a second that now goes to a top of the timing sheet. 6.5 minutes left on the clock, and times still improving. Leon Burnt, another impressive improvement from him, just a couple of hundreds away. Castorino, the reigning champion. What can the Aston Martin do in the number 4 car? And right now it's good enough for P4. Castorino, of course, previously in seasons gone, was classed as a little bit of a dark horse from time to time. The Italian driver that could deliver some fantastic races. Of course, he won on his debut when we saw the 720S Evo making its way towards the Pro Series for the very first time and to ACC. He won on home turf at Monza race circuit. So he made that statement. Took a little bit of time until we saw him really resurge in performance once again. But last season, he was absolutely unflappable. His consistency was exceptional. And in the end, in the Aston Martin, that was what gave him the championship title and a well-earned victory in the season at that. And we'll see how he looks to try to continue that form going into this one. Of course, he had that amazing podium streak last time out, finishing P11. Not the easiest of times at Watkins Glen, so the streak was broken, but he will, of course, look to see what he can do. Cody Sherritt improves up to P12 as 5 minutes or so left on the clock, as Michael Moning on the circuit as well. A number 24 car going very well. For those that are unfamiliar with the ranking system here in the Case King Pro Series, The number relates to their relative elo within the server. So if you see a very high-numbered car in a very low-numbered position, they are well outperforming their expectation. Biggest surprise on that front right now is Leon Burnt for Renwells and Esports. Leon, very quick driver, and definitely not one to be underestimated. But number 25 car sitting in P2, Michael Moan number 24 sitting P7, and the likes of Delfanta Campanella around the outside of a top 10 as well. Interestingly enough, Luke Whitehead struggling a little bit for one lap pace, more so than I would have thought. So the British driver, two-time Pro Series champion, the only man to win this championship twice alongside Marco Bischoff. Not quite managing to dial in that one lap potential that would have perhaps expected from the Veloce Esports driver, and I've had my attention drawn to the livery of a Mr. Samir Foch for not being able to miss this one from a country mile. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. The camera angle's unfortunately not quite updated yet on the Mustang, and yep, you're right. Yep, you would. We've had some pretty impressive liveries over the course of the Pro Series seasons. We've had some pretty fluorescent ones at times, certainly ones that have stood out, but yeah, this one certainly is pretty, as I've just noticed the FIA reference on the side of that one, but it's certainly a wonderfully constructed sticker collage of different bits and pieces of the sim racing community. That's and apparently even a picture of Mr. Timo Carpenter on the bonnet of the car. Unfortunately, I can't quite get a close-up of that one. As he was giving a little bit of a kind tow and assistance to, I believe, that may have been a Mr. George Boothby. It was, who is making his way on through. Although by the looks of it, I don't think actually on an improvement of a lap. So he will look to kick things off once again. So it's Philip Menard right now leading the way. Of course, we saw Philip contesting at the pointy end of the field a few times at the tail end of last season in the BMW. This season, over into that Mustang, really pushing the limits through Spoon Curve there. He is very confident, dialed in. Won't get away with much more than that as George Boothby making his way through the opening couple of corners. He is finding lap time already, so we'll go on board with the winningest driver in Pro Series history. Although I also do actually have to make a bit of a mention that this man, Timo Karppinen, the Gripax Engineering Bentley, might be on an absolute blinder of a lap at the moment. He's 3/10 up in the number 16 car, making his way through 130R, takes a huge chunk of curve. Oh my goodness, the correction from Karppinen. How does he even keep it remotely together there? He squares it up, miracle of all miracles, into the final chicane, and he hasn't even lost that much time. Karppinen, number 16 car, making his way to the line, giving it all the beans that he possibly can, and as he makes his way across, it's going to be close. It's the front row for the finish drive for the time being. An absolutely full commitment send from Timo Karppinen there. We'll see what he can do in the remaining part of the qualifying session, but that was certainly a bit of a moment there. I think the car must have just slightly bottomed out over that final bit of the curve. Sometimes if you are running quite low to the ground, running quite soft suspension, it can catch you out, and just suddenly, all of a sudden, you kind of got this full amount of drive on the outside tyre, and it really does swing the car across. Of course, we've seen some big moments over the years in real life there, but Timo Karppinen, quick reactions, if you like, and apparently the Bentley, a bit of a lottery going through 130R at the moment. We'll have to see how he gets on in the race. Meanwhile, George Boothby trying to push very hard, and he's lost all the time that he had. He was 2/10 up on the Delta, and it's all gone. That poor exit through the final chicane. I don't think we'll see an improvement. Oh, he does actually take it just a couple of hundreds off. He's 3,000ths ahead of his teammates. But that is his qualifying done, and he'll be frustrated with that. There was time in that lap to potentially make it another pole position to his very, very long tally of P1 starts. So it'll be no higher than P4 for the number 2 car in the server. Philip Menard on a lap at the moment in the Mustang. He's currently got that pole position by just a couple of hundreds. He'll be looking, trying to extend that margin over Timo Karppinen. You'd have to think has a little bit more in the tank after that run through 130. Philippe Menard really pushing the limits. Everybody being caught out over the final exit curve of Casio Triangle. Will he quite make it to the line for another lap? Castorino improves up to P4. Philippe Menard does cross the line. Won't be an improvement, but he will get one more attempt, I do believe. Timo Karppinen into the pits then. So right now, at best, it will be a front row start for the Bentley. But I have to say, he's done it in fashion so far. Leon Burns back out on circuit as well. We've got Del Fanta, last week's race winner in the Honda, trying to find some lap time. Few cars further down the order improving as well. But the number 14 car, he was in control, patient and calm over the course of last week's race at Watkins Glen. Arguably slightly less dynamic and tricky conditions today, but it doesn't mean it's any easier. We've seen that corner catch out a few cars. The Honda really leaning on those outside tires. He makes his way through the final turn. It's neat and tidy for Del Fanta. It's not going to be challenging pole position, but it could move him a bit further up into the top 10. Takes the short line to the finish, and he's going to stay where he was. He does improve, but it's not enough to take pole position. Meanwhile, a man that was previously up on his Delta earlier on in the lap, Grant Carreras, still on a move. Philippe Menard not improving either, so not many cars left right now that are looking to try to snatch that pole position away from the South African. Leon Burnt down on his Delta as well, so it all might be about this final chicane for Carreras. He's brave on the braking zone. Takes that second apex nicely on the power. Oh, that was a big, big cut to the right-hand side. I think he's lost all the momentum there. It could still be pretty tight towards the line. He's going to take as short as run he can. He's going to find a McLaren very, very quickly. No, he won't. And it's not an improvement for Carreras. So Philippe Menard still looking, trying to improve. He takes a very short run across that final apex curve as well, and will even get a little bit of a tow of one of the Hondas to the start-finish line as well. I think this is just trying to rub salt into the wound for the Mustang driver. He doesn't improve his lap time, but it doesn't matter because he is your pole man here today at Suzuka. And would you look at that? The margins in qualifying. 6 cars within 600ths of a second. An absolutely incredible margin between each of those cars. But, you know, why would I expect anything different? This is the Case King Pro Series. This is what we have come to know, love, and expect from this wonderful, wonderful championship. I cannot wait to see how this is going to play out this evening with these drivers. And Philippe Menard doing an exceptional job there in the Mustang. Now, usually, for those that are familiar with these broadcasts, will know that we have a wonderful little animation and overlay that we do like to show with the parts of the kind of the grid walk as such here on the stream. Unfortunately, due to the slightly wonky scenario of my internet, I can't access those at the moment. So you'll just have to rely on my wonderful words as we make our way through there. But what I will do before we do some of that is I will show and run you through some of the incredible prizes that we have in this championship, and maybe give a little bit more context as to why these drivers are always as committed to these battles as they are, as the stakes are pretty high. All, of course, brought to you by the incredible title sponsor of this series, CaseKing.de, a €2,500 coupon for Asetek Sim Sports products, an incredible lineup and array of gear that you can get your hands on and really kit out your experience behind the wheel of these sims. For the driver that finishes in second place, we have €1,500 coupon for Moser Racing Gear, another fantastic bit of kit that you can get as well, and certainly, of course, with some options in there that are very nicely accessible at the lower end of the budget spectrum. But with €1,500 to spend, I'm sure that people get some hands on some very nice stuff indeed. And if you finish third, a very nicely kissed out gaming PC from Black Dagger. So an incredible lineup of prizes that these drivers are contesting for, and as these drivers will be looking to push on. And as we make our way to this grid walk in just a second, then we do have a little bit of a poll going on this evening about who is likely to be winning this race. Philip Menard, Mr. Karpinen, excuse me, sorry, how dare I, Mr. Carpet, Leon Burns, the reigning champion Castorino, or another driver. Right now, with quite a large majority vote, it is the Boatley that has taken those series of votes, and I must admit, you start in P2 in a race like this, and with a fantastic drive last week at Watkins Glen in tricky conditions, Timo is very likely got a bit of a spring in his step here. We've also got a vote for Michael Moenig with that qualifying position in P8 as well. Who knows, if there is carnage at the pointy end of the grid, then maybe it will go his way. Some others cheering for Philip as well. So a bit of a mix amongst the field, but one thing is with absolute certainty, there is going to be an absolute blinder for this evening, and I cannot wait to get stuck into this one because it is going to be a cracker. It always is in the Case King Pro Series. We know that, we love that, and it is going to be fantastic. The formation lap will be underway in just a few seconds' time, and we will walk through the grid of these drivers at the very same moment and see exactly how our field lines up for this evening. So, whilst unfortunately we can't show him off in the greatest of light with the camera angle that we do have, Mr. Philip Menard starts on pole position and is in a great place to try to see if he can add another victory to his tally. He knows how to win races in the Pro Series. I'm sure he's going to be looking to try to make it one more. Timo Karpinen, of course, a rather big fan favourite of the evening. The number 16 car starts in P2 with Leon Burt. Impressive stuff from the German driver. He will start in P3. Amadeo Castorino starts in the number 4 in P4 to line up on the second row of the grid. The reigning champion hasn't always needed qualifying in his favour to do something about the race victory, so who knows what he can do this evening. George Boothby, another one of these Mustangs. He will start in 5th position, a bit more towards the pointy end of the grid, but not quite the lead Mustang today. Grant Karekas starting in P6, just in front of our sole Nissan in the field. Jade Hutchison, the Canadian driver, is in the lead portion of the 4th row of the grid, ahead of Michael Moenig, a driver that has had some cheers and support already in the chat for this evening. Ada Walsingham, another one of these Fords, clearly designated on the rear wing, starting in P9, with Luke Whitehead starting in P10. Not quite the qualifying that he would have wanted, but who knows what he can do in the race. An aggressive driver that can certainly make his way through the field. Eric Dalfanta, last week's race winner, starts in P11, with Cody Sheriff next of the Mustang starting in P12. Avon Manson, P13 for the Swedish driver, and Fabrizio Campanella, who had a fantastic opening race last week inside of the top 10. He starts in P14. Janos Reinders in P15 ahead of the only other two-time champion of this series, Marco Bischoff, for Team Nitro. He starts in P16 ahead of Sasha Vassner in the Aston Martin. And he will start just ahead of Jan Philip Nuremberger, a driver who has been able to make his way up through the order on a few occasions. Florian Duakov, the back-to-back pole sitter from the last couple of races of his championship. Disappointing quali for him today. Who knows what he can do in the race. Lucas Roda starts in P18 ahead of Noah Eder, the next of those Team Nitro cars, as slowing down just a little bit, I think, getting himself back into position as Valentin Barron, the Frenchman in the McLaren. He starts in 22nd place. Lauren Prima in the number 31 car. He starts in 23rd. Luke Anderson, South African, starts in 24th place for Genesis Esports, with Jentel van Thielen and Vladislav Kolosov making up the 13th row of the grid. Michael Frey starts in 27th place in the Porsche, with Sebastian Zahenna starting in 28th. Followed up by a man that took a astonishing last round victory of Season 14 out of the Northern side. Jardier starts in 29th place. He'll be looking to try to go for his own trophy once again to move his way up through the order. Wojtek Neuwirth starts in 30th, ahead of Jimmy Holm and Samir Foch with that number 19 Mustang livery. Zakari Layton returning to the championship in the Honda, starts 33rd, with Dennis Wietschorker 34th. Joshua Gruning for Visual Esports 35th. Fabio Steyer in the number 27 Porsche. He starts 36th. Krzysztof Makowski, 37th. Mattia Mex, 38th. And last but certainly not least, Daniel Solon rounding out the grid. But that is your lineup for this evening as eyes turn towards the pointy end of the field. Kylo's returned, pizzas at the ready, and 60 minutes of action here at Suzuka for round number 2 of the Case King Pro Series in Season 15 to kick off and get underway. The various fan clubs for all these incredibly talented drivers are buckled in and ready to go as the tensions rise, waiting for these likes. As you can see, the brakes being held by Teemu Karppinen on the front row of the grid to try to maximise that start at the very front of the field. But who's going to get the jump on the run in towards turn 1 as we wait for lights out? Here's lights out, away they go, and it looks pretty close between the Mustang and the Bentley towards the first turn. I think Teemu Karppinen with a little bit of an advantage. How brave does he feel around the outside? The answer is very almost contact immediately, a little bit of a touch, but Teemu Karppinen just about manages to keep it together. But as they make their way on through, both the onboard and Amadeo Castorino trying to capitalise, and they sweep around the Grip Packs engineering car immediately as it's 2 positions lost on the opening corner for Teemu Karppinen as they all weave their way through the S's. But Philippe Menard leads away, but will the stewards have something to say about that? We'll have to wait and see. It's chaos in the mid-pack as well. A lot of jostling for positioning. You see Marco Bischoff there side by side with Albert Manson, who's going to get a little bit squeezed. Through Dunlop curve they go. The 2-time Pro Series champion not hanging about on the opening lap. He's already gained 2 positions. They head through Bodegna for the first time. Manson with a little bit of visual contact in the background. Somebody went into the gravel there, and that was Jensel Van Thiel, I believe, and Kolosov may have got caught up in that as well. And there he is, Kolosov from Ontario is now recovering back onto the track as they head on down to the hairpin. That's a dive and a half from Luke Anderson there. Oh, it's got Carpenter's around. Carpenter's around. A terrible opening lap for the man that started P2 in this race. The chat will be in absolute despair over that one, and we'll try to go back on the replay then and see what has happened to the man that has already had a very busy time in this race. We go back on the replay, so here we go. So he's got George Boothby behind him. There's no way he loops it on his own, surely. Oh my goodness, Teemu Karppinen and Grant Karekas, everybody collects the Bentley. Oh, that is such a painful thing. And oh my goodness, Lucas Roda with reactions of the century. Same for Daniel Solon as well. And I mean, there's suggestions in the chat there about being netcode, but I don't know. I'm not sure if Teemu is streaming, so there may be a better perspective from his side. But I must admit that really did just look like maybe a bit too ambitious on the power. And, yeah, that was kind of my thinking. You know, we do live in this TC0 meta of ACC. It is the fastest way to go, and sometimes it makes these twitchy cars just a little bit too twitchy. And unfortunately, Bentley, the man that the majority of you had your money on, unfortunately, now looking like a race victory is seemingly increasingly unlikely, and any penalty that may or may not come the way of Philippe Menard, of course, rather less decisive and impactful as we continue to progress on in this one, unless Philippe Menard does get a hefty penalty. Of course, it won't look to promote Teemu Karppinen under these circumstances anymore, as just looking, and it is still under investigation from what I can see. So Philippe Menard has to worry about whether or not he's going to lose in those positions to those couple of cars behind him. Menard never had pole position, and perhaps not too bad. A TC0 moment in the Lambo Spa a few seasons ago, and yeah, well, unfortunately, these cars, yeah, they can be pretty tricky with TC0, especially depending on how you look to set them up. I think we have some dives in the background, actually, with who was that? Sebastian Zahenda trying to go down the inside of Samuel Foch. I think he lost out a bit on the exit as they now progress up the hill, side-by-side action behind with Jimmy Holman, a man that often has a bit of following in these races. That Mustang power managing to pull his way up the hill as down the inside just up ahead. That's Michael Frey making his way past Lauren Primo. I'll tell you what, Samuel Foch is having a think about this as well. He's got a good run out the spoon curve. There's barely a car's width to the inside line, but I'll tell you what, with number 19, car's really thinking about it, ducking and diving. Which way do you look to go? Michael Frey trying his best to hang on in the pause. The straight line speed, of course, not fantastic. fantastic in that car. They all make their way on through for time. It's a big dive from Lauren Prima. Has he overcooked it? He has. He's gone into Narnia on the exit. Samir Foss says thank you very much. Sweeps his way around the outside. I think he's going to bring Zahedna to the party as well if he can. Down the inside but through final corner. The torque from that Mustang is pretty handy and hefty. And I think Lauren Prima is going to avoid losing any more positions. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff briefly was side by side with Hutchinson just ahead. These Mustangs all moving very quickly. There's been a moment down for the first couple of turns as everyone's then starting to jostle for position down here as they make their way on through. The yellow flag as well actually through the first corner entirely. As you can see, snaking on through, battling behind. I think that was Luke Addison with a bit of side-by-side moment. Jardier trying to make his way out through the field. He's up 6 positions. Samir Foch up 7. Of course, those two very good friends. Jardier now watching, waiting for the opportunity to try to come along. We go on board the rear wing of this Mustang, the Aston Martin of Jardier Mandling with that shorter line, sneaking away on the inside of Lucas Roda. And it is now 7 positions gained for the number 5 car. We'll see if he can make it 8 very, very soon. Leon Byrne, I'll tell you what, at the front of this grid, the top 3 have really broken away since that moment for Teemu Karppinen that caused a bit of a break in the train. Each of these drivers just separated by about half a second or so. Philip Martin leading the way. Leon Byrne in hot pursuit behind. Now with Castorino biding his time somewhat. He knows how to play these scenarios. As Hutchinson with a dive and a little bit of a kick of oversteer. I'll say a little bit of a kick. It was more than that. Marco Bischoff now. Does he look to bum draft the Nissan? He does. He bum drafts a pair of them past Fabrizio Campanella. And now it's game on into 130R. He lifts. He has to. Behind the Nissan as they head on through there. It's a bit of a wide moment for Marco Bischoff. Does Campanella think about it? Look back up the inside. He does. He's dived down the inside there. The Visual Esports drive, I'm sure, will have Pranav on his feet as we head on through. And Marco Bischoff losing a little bit of that slipstream now. Has a chain of 4 cars of Campanella, Sherritt, Delfanta, Carreras all behind as they're all gaining in the tow as they make their way on down towards the first turn. Somebody, I think, who's just annihilated themselves from the server. I think that's Jens Van Thielen that briefly flashed up on my screen. But meanwhile, Marco Bischoff, you can see, he's clearing away. But it's all about the battle between Campanella and Sherritt behind as Campanella does manage to hold on to that position. The V10 in the back of that Lamborghini doing just about enough to defeat the power of V8 American Muscle as they make their way on through the S's once more. Incredible, incredible cameras. Seeing these guys wild their way through as Carreras trying to bounce back from that incident on the opening lap. He's found opportunity. You can so often try to go up the inside through Dunlop Curve if you carry that momentum through, as he's keeping last week's race winner very honest, trying to go for the over and under into the second deck there, but he can't make it stick. He'll have to find another opportunity elsewhere. He hunts around the back of Delfanta. Does he think about a dive up the inside into the hairpin? It's covered off just a little bit, enough by Honda to stop him from being able to sneak out the inside, and they have to wait for another opportunity. And I'd expect that VTEC power to start to pull away just metre by metre as they head on up the hill towards Spoon Curve. Meanwhile, we look towards this man who might have an opportunity at making an overtake in just a moment. Porsche versus Mustang is not looking very favourable for Luke Whitehead, who has gained 5 positions in this race. Great stuff from two-time Pro Series champion, but he might be about to be contested by a Mustang that's looking very handy as it stands at the moment. We had some cheering on this man for the potential race win. He started down in P8. He's now found himself behind one of the winningest drivers in Pro Series history. And you see the Porsche absolutely rapid through the final chicane. Incredible stuff there from Luke Whitehead, but how much does he start to lose on that Mustang down at the start finish straight? You can see that car just gaining all the time, and even down in the first couple of turns, Michael Boning absolutely planted through there as he tries to hunt around for an opportunity on Luke Whitehead. Now I'd expect to see this Porsche start to pull away again as we head on through the S's, the first, the second apex, and the Porsche just starts to extend its margin bit by bit. Is able to get on the power just a little bit earlier, rotates a little bit sooner. It just manages to increase that gap by a few vital yards, and then through Dunlop Curve, there's a little bit of a wiggle from Luke Whitehead. He is pushing, he is being kept very honest by that Mustang, who then immediately starts to reel in the flat 6 power Porsche as they head on up the hill. The torque of that Mustang is something seriously not to be messed with. But Luke Whitehead right now is keeping that car behind. Meanwhile, we flick to pictures for the battle of the race lead. Castorino has dropped a little bit away from these two, but Leon Burns is the man on the move. He's got the fastest lap of the race as it stands at the moment. Philip Menard in his sights. Perhaps that Mustang is just starting to eat through its tyres a little bit, and this 296 is getting stronger and stronger. But the problem is the straight line speed of the car ahead is absolutely monstrous. Meanwhile, I can tell you, no further action for that incident between Menard and Carpenter at the beginning of the race. We had a warning for the 21 car. So try to look through the order. That was for Sebastian Zehentner for avoidable contact. A 5-second time penalty for the number 32. That was Voltec Neuwirth, although I think he had retired to the pits. A 15-second time penalty for the number 35 car. That was Vladislav Kolosov. I think that must have been for the contact. We didn't quite catch it down through the first couple of Degners, and that is it as it stands from our stewards, our wonderful live stewarding team, doing an amazing and immense amount of work to invigilate these races. You can see through the final sector and the opening part of the lap, that Mustang really starts to pull away and gives some problems to Leon Burns. And Castorino again, just lurking behind, as is this man, Michael Moning in the number 24 car, all over the back of Luke Whitehead. Not an easy thing to make that one buckle under pressure, but he has certainly given it a good go in the Mustang at the moment. Just 10 minutes into this race, it's been incredible so far, and a big thank you to those of you that have already been following and supporting over the course of this stream. It is an absolute pleasure to have you all here. We are closing in towards what would be a little bit of kind of a halfway milestone. Usually we go by the 100, but 3750 would be a kind of a pretty lovely little number if we could hit that by the end of this evening's race, as we try to make our way ever closer to 4,000 followers here over on Twitch. So if you are enjoying the incredible action that you are seeing on your screen by some of the very best on ACC and the Low Fuel Motorsport platform, then do consider giving the channel a follow. You can stay in touch with all the amazing action these guys will be putting on over the weeks to come. And I think in terms of there's for next week. So next week there's been a vote over on Twitter, which I think is still open for 12 more minutes, if I'm not mistaken. When I last checked in, the vote was between Silverstone and Barcelona, with Silverstone just about having the edge over the Spanish circuit. So if you guys want your voice heard on where you would like to see these guys racing for the third round of the season, of course it'll be 90 minutes of racing around there. Whether or not that influences your decision, I shall let that sit with you. But I think whilst it was looking to be Silverstone, there is still 12 minutes, let's say, I believe, remaining for that outcome to be changed. So you can have your influence on the drivers where they head for the third round of the season. Oh, 24 minutes. Thank you, Penta, in the chat then. So even more time to mull it over, have a little bit of a think to yourself, and see exactly what you want in the third round of this incredible championship. We've got a bit of chaos down here between the McLaren and the Ferrari of Kolosov and Sol. Of course, Kolosov has got a penalty on board this McLaren, as the battle for the top three very, very close, but it's not quite as close as this one, as Kolosov, big run in the McLaren down the inside at turn one. And I think he is going to get the job done there. He's got a bit more work to do, though, if he wants to hold on to that position by the end of the race. As meanwhile, I need to have a look out the field, because look at this. We'll go on board with Amadeo Castorino as he watches Leon Burns and Philip Menard battling ahead of him, just biding his time, waiting for an opportunity. He was the fastest man of these three, and George Boothby, just 2.5 seconds behind, was very much on the same pace as well. If these guys start to scrap, Boothby will be in this fight, and we know just how good he can be. It is very likely that so I think even 41 minutes apparently on the vote. So even more time for you guys to have your vote. As meanwhile, there's a yellow flag down at the hairpin. It's Luke Anderson that's gone around. Oh, he's in the wall by the looks of it. Trying to rejoin on the circuit. I think he should hopefully get going again without any further interaction with the field. We will head, though, for a replay. And right now it's looking like, oh, that's a wide moment. So that's going to allow Jardier, I think that is, to get involved. Jardier sneaks his way on through, and now it's a contact with the Aston behind. Oh, there is! Oh! And that's how Jardier, I think, has ended up very far down the field. So the Aston Martin of Zahedna, I think it was. Carpenter's really not having a great time on that hairpin, is he? Unfortunately, Jardier, they're being collected after that kind of double punt. Or was it Lucas Roda, actually? I think Lucas Roda may have been the one further up the order. I saw another one of those Aston Martin, those Sim RC cars going through. Meanwhile, Anderson on the recovery drive, although that's not going to help him. Catches the grass on the entry, demolishes the cone. The Mustang is going to say, what even are track limits? And then skip his way across the chicane, trying to go for another move in another corner's time. But looking towards the front of the field then, the top three very, very close together. With Philip Menard coming under increasing pressure from Leon Burns and Amadeo Castorino. But they'll stay nip and tuck as it stands at the moment. Michael Monin still hasn't been able to dispatch of Luke Whitehead ahead of him. But the Mustang, with that straight line speed advantage, will only take the smallest of errors from Luke in order to allow an opportunity for that car to storm its way on through. We know just how good it is in some of these sections. We'll go on board, actually, as being in drift mode on the exit of the hairpin, trying to get that power down. How much does he close through this uphill section? The advantage will be with the Porsche to start with, then that a little bit of acceleration phase, but as the speed starts to build up through the hill, you see the Mustang really starts to reel in that Porsche, and Luke Whitehead, he is struggling with those rear tyres. And I'll tell you what, this is a pretty good opportunity right now for the Mustang. We'll go for a little bit of a different bonnet view, but Michael Moning gaining a lot of time. Luke Whitehead defends to the inside line. Moning not quite close enough or brave enough to send up the inside there, but he is continuing to apply the pressure to a two-time Pro Series champion. A fantastic effort here from the number 24 car, cheered on by his array of fans in the chat, who I'm sure will be loving seeing their man absolutely stuck into the action. And he'll be trying to see if there's any other way that he can explore opportunities around this circuit. An absolute rocket ship in a straight line as he makes his way on down towards turn 108. As they fly on through, how well could he stick with the Porsche through the S's? That's the killer for this Mustang. Luke Whitehead, see that Porsche just dances its way through the apex, but that does come at a cost. Usually that extra little bit of slip angle, that extra bit of rotation, that's what starts to really lean on those rear tyres. You can see Luke Whitehead struggling away with this car, and Michael Moning, he stayed with him pretty good, touching distance. He's not going to quite get the opportunity into the first Degner, but it's all about whether or not he can get a good exit through the second Degner and carry that momentum towards the hairpin. He's very, very close. He's very close indeed. He'd have to be brave to really set out the inside. He's not quite there, but he is absolutely on the back. There's a mistake from Luke Whitehead. Oh, and a bigger mistake on the exit as well. And that might start to give Michael Moning, maybe not into Spoon Curve, but 130R. We see these have the opportunities start to come his way. In actual fact, may come along a little bit sooner. Look at this. The momentum on board the number 24 car. He sends it down the inside of a two-time champion. Can he make it stick? Luke Whitehead sent to the outside of Michael Moning. Into the top 5 he goes, but the number 3 car is not going to be trying to give that one up easily. He will lock himself straight into the slipstream, but even with the tow on board that Mustang, it just pulls and pulls on down towards 130R. But this car we're on board with should be quicker through here. Can the Luke Whitehead be brave? Michael Moning pretty brave himself into the final chicane. They look to go, and I don't think now that unless it's on strategy, there's much that Luke Whitehead's going to be able to do, because the pace advantage has seemed like it's been the way of the Mustang that's made his way on by. And Michael Moning has got himself securely into P5. Fantastic racing from the number 24 car. Everyone loved that in the chat. So much so that Nightbot, for the first time this evening, has struck down upon the chat, celebrating Michael Moning's fantastic overtake there. Unfortunately, potentially if you are a little bit on the new side to the world of LFM and here with us on the stream, the Nightbot, he tries his best. He's a bit unnecessarily aggro. He tries to keep everything under control, but he's a bit overly sensitive. It's kind of like a deer. You kind of have to approach him slowly and then learn to like you. But we're still more or less able to see the incredible celebrations of everybody in the chat enjoying the race that we have going on here. Still, the top three absolutely nose to tail, less than a second separating these cars and just chasing along in the distance, closing up the gap bit by bit. George Boothby, that gap, remember, just about 10 minutes ago, that was 2.6 seconds. Now it is just down to 2. Might seem like a small difference, might seem like it's still far away, but as the race progresses, that can very likely change. And we've got a bit of flashing of the lights there from Marco Bischoff after, I believe, a dive from Fabrizio Campanella in the Lamborghini. We'll go on board with the V10-powered Raging Bull. Oh, there's a slide from the Mustang. Remember, Marco Bischoff, very uncharacteristic mistake last week at Watkins Glen, losing the position at the line after getting it all wrong on the final lap. And then down the inside, my goodness, it was a brave dive and a half. He found a gap that I think, as far as Marco Bischoff was concerned, didn't really exist. But he made it work, he made it stick, and he's made his way, hold it, and he's made his way on up into position. We've got a little bit of shenanigans going on with some of these cars. Hopefully, as we progress on, as another subscription to us here on the channel as well. Neo, thank you very much for that support. That is very, very much appreciated. All of those additional bits of support really do go a long way with those that try to make this the most fantastic series it possibly can be. And I think the action that we are seeing this evening is going to show just that. Philip Millar, Leon Burns, and Amedeo Castorino, nose to tail, battling for these positions inside of the top three, and are haunted, unfortunately. I think you're absolutely right. Thankfully, it's not something that these guys in the server are experiencing, but yes, my slightly compromised internet situation for the evening, rather pain symptom there, but hopefully, fingers crossed, if we can just about live. I think we had a brief moment for a second. It's going to be potentially a little bit of an intermittent ride, I fear, over the course of this race. But hopefully, if it can stick with us and hold on out for the vast majority, hopefully we can continue on and enjoy this incredible evening of action as we look to see how it all plays on out. Grant Carreras coming under pressure from Eric Del Fanta, last week's race winner, side by side as they make their way on up the hill. Very close there between the Ferrari driver and the Honda. Outside of the top 10, these positions still being fought for as intensely as any of the rest of them. And then make their way on through. Down the back straight they go. And seeing whether or not the Ferrari can do anything about that car ahead. I don't think he's going to be able to. The straight line speed advantage, not really in favour of the Ferrari, but he will try to see a final opportunity elsewhere, as meanwhile pit window has opened and Leon Burns has made his way into the pit lane very, very early on. And so he is looking to go for that undercut strategy and see what he can look to do about undercutting the likes of Philip Millar ahead, and seeing if that gives him an opportunity to gain position over the course of this race. It could be a very interesting one indeed to see how that all plays out. Unfortunately, I can see my internet rather ducking and diving as it stands at the moment. We will try to hold on as best as we can, and unfortunately, it may be the way it proceeds this evening, but I do appreciate everybody sticking with the incredible action that we have here at Suzuka for the evening. Philip Millar with only a very small amount of breathing space. Castorino quite clearly with a little bit of extra pace in the tank. Because immediately, with Leon Burns out the way, he has then closed up that gap to half second himself. So Philip Millar is struggling, and you have to think on that basis, fresh tyres for Leon Burns, that undercut may work out absolutely beautifully for the 296. And that Ferrari is a car that can likely preserve its tyres. So whilst it may seem like a bit of an aggressive strategy to go for right now, he is in a car that may well be able to keep those tyres alive to the end of the race. There's a yellow flag out for Florian Duakop, another victim down at the hairpin. Something has happened to the Honda driver, a man who's had a really good resurgence in one lap form especially, but today around Suzuka looking like it's been a bit more of a tricky time. He was battling around. Trying to see who that was. I think it may have been Philip Nuremberger. And as we go on through, and it's contact with Valentine Barry behind in the McLaren. I know, and we will see what the stewards have to say there, but at least from that angle, you know, I don't think Florian Reed, he didn't open the door, and I think that Valor unfortunately has just rolled through the apex and then just gone into the back of the number 6 car. So I'm sure Florian's going to be a little bit on the miff side about that. Meanwhile, your race leaders, Villamar, Castorino, have both come into the pit, so they are reacting to the undercuts from Leon Burns. And, it looked like Duracolt started spinning. Oh, maybe he did. So maybe if he did have a bit of a moment midway through the corner, then that may have been what led to Valentine closing distance a little bit quicker than he was initially anticipating. So I have to see, of course, the stewards have more angles than we do, and we have to see what they decide. As the likes of George Boothby have decided to stay on out, so he was closing up to that group. Maybe he wants to try to come along. His P4 position, net P4 position, is rather safe as it stands. So he may well be looking to try to go for that overcut and approach these guys who may be scrapping away at the tail end of the race. Meanwhile, Leon Burton then has the undercut strategy worked for him. There they are, Menard and Castorino coming out of pit lane. Is there going to be a 296 scrambling his way on by? Here it comes, and Leon Burton leads here at Suzuka. He sweeps on by the pair of them, and the undercut, with just a 1 lap offset, Leon Burton manages to make it into the net race lead of round number 2 of the Case King Pro Series. Incredible stuff there from the man that decided to try to push it on the strategy. And now it all comes down to whether or not can he hold on to it, because that Mustang, if it does get close, it will be very, very quick indeed. And it may have an opportunity to make a move. But I would have to say, I would suspect that unless Philip can get the job done in the opening, in these next kind of 5 or 6 laps, I think he's going to struggle, because based on what we saw with the Ferrari and how it's able to hold on to its tyres, it is likely to start to edge that gap away, and it may be more about worrying about Castorino as far as Philip Menard is concerned. Anderson versus Veitschorker side by side through Spoon Curve they go. It is still, for the time being, game on, as Veitschorker having to defend that inside line, because here comes Luke Anderson in the Mustang trying to go all the way around the outside. We've seen Alonso and Schumacher do it. Is Luke Anderson going to do it in a GT car? He's trying to be brave with it. Oh, he's got a little bit off into the next postcode. There's not much on the inside line there, but he manages to keep his foot planted. He gets the job done. Veitschorker will, I'm sure, claim he's been overtaken off track there, but Luke Anderson, brave as you like, manages to get the move done and dusted. I can also tell you now that with fresh tyres on board Leon Burns' car, he is pulling away from these behind. He, of course, closed in a little bit in the final sector of the lap by the Mustang, but that gap already up around half a second. George Boothby, Michael Moning, Whitehead, Walsingham, Korekis all deciding to stay out. And we've got Walsingham now applying the pressure to the back of Luke Whitehead. Of course, these two are teammates, and Luke really is struggling in this race. I think the Porsche just eating through its tyres a little bit more aggressively than the two-time champion would have wanted. And Walsingham trying to see what he can look to do about that. We saw Michael Moning get the job done. He's pulled away since then, has that clear air, and he has really been able to charge along after getting himself into what was net P5 of this race before the pit stop started kicking in. We also have another Mustang versus Mustang fight between Sherritt and Manson. And also, for those that have pitted as well, we also have the likes of Bischoff versus Eric Delfandre, of course, last week's race winner. Leon Burton has opened up his gap now to a second, as Veitschorker versus Anderson is still going on. Anderson trying to hold on to that position. Veitschorker trying to find an opportunity, but we know how good the car that sits ahead of him is in a straight line. We are also only now just 13 followers away from 3,750. It'd be a lovely little milestone if we can hit it by the end of this stream. Still 31 minutes off the clock and 31 minutes of incredible action here at Suzuka to get stuck into and enjoy, as more and more cars are coming into the pit. So if you are enjoying what you are seeing, then do consider giving the channel a follow. As also, though, as it stands, we are a nice 3737 followers here over on the English Twitch channel. Of course, also remember that with this simultaneously streaming over to YouTube, that you can also look to catch up on the action after this round is done and dusted, and see exactly what these guys have been up to. And I saw an absolute wealth of response to that for last week's rounds, and a big thank you for all of the amazing support. We look towards our race leader as it stands on this track. George Boothby still staying out, still looking to extend this opening stint as more and more cars emerging out of pit lane. You can see Luke Whitehead comes out, and he is very far back from the likes of Castro. Bear in mind, at one point, he was just a few seconds adrift of his teammate George Boothby, because we haven't seen where George is going to filter out into all of this yet, but there is a 12-second gap for Luke Whitehead. That goes to show the amount of time he's lost through that battling and some of that race pace. And with a pretty similar situation in this second stint as well, pitting around at the halfway mark. And we'll have to try to see if he can keep the likes of Fabrizio Campanella and Eric Del Fanta behind, who are pretty nip and tuck with one another at the moment. As George Boothby continues to stay out, and is very much looking to try to go for that overcut strategy. And yeah, Boothby likes his late races with fresh slicks, and it's a reasonable strategy that you would expect around here in his position, because he hasn't really been under pressure. In the opening part of the race, you know, there was a not insignificant gap in front of him, and there was a relatively decent gap behind as well, so he's not at much of a risk when it comes to being undercut from cars behind. So he can afford to go later into the race, will theoretically have a bit more distance that he has to look to try to make up towards those cars if he is going to get stuck into that fight for the podium positions. But if they scrap away themselves, he can may well arrive on the scene with what will be the equivalent of maybe anywhere between 15-20 minutes worth of fresher tyres. That's a big difference, and that Mustang we know can make overtake. So if you've got that car with good tyres, locked into a spot where he can tag along into the slipstream and blast his way on by, George Boothby, of course, with all of the wealth of skill and knowledge that he has in the cockpit of that car, will look to execute it. I'm sure execute it very well, I have no doubt. And apparently he will have to pit this lap because of fuel for this one. And I must admit, I didn't actually remember refueling being in these races, but evidently there it is. And the Mustang, unsurprisingly, perhaps a little bit of a gurgly boy, and chewing through its gallons of well, probably several gallons of petrol that is guzzling its way on through. Meanwhile, a Mustang that's starting to have different problems with Amado Castorino, the reigning champion, really starting to increase that pressure. You can see Leon Burns just with a bit more of a comfortable gap than what we saw Philip have previously, hovering around the second mark in that final sector. Will close up by about 2 or 3 tenths as George Boothby has now come into the pits then. But these guys very close. I think Castorino, he must have invalidated his last lap, but that was about the fastest lap of the race at 58.9, so he really is on a charge, on a move. Actually lost a little bit out the hairpin there for a moment. And what happened for Hutchinson, I think Hutchinson, he got caught up in that opening lap incident with Teemu Karppinen. So Teemu Karppinen went around at the hairpin, and there was a lot of drivers, granted Korekas were one of them as well, that got involved, kind of had nowhere to go in the apex of that corner. And then I think lost a chunk of time, and I think may have actually retired out of the server, if I'm not mistaken. So unfortunately, our lovely Nissan that was hovering around the pointy end of the grid, and we were interested to see how that was going to play out for the Canadian. But unfortunately, did not go his way. And as far as follow-up in terms of battling with Luke after that, I must admit, I am not quite sure. There's been a lot of chaos and carnage in the server so far, so it's been a little bit tricky to keep track of at times. So I think unfortunately may have missed that one a bit. Now, here is the situation as it stands there. So your top 3 of Bernd Menard Castorino, with anywhere between a sort of 13 to 15 minute tyre advantage over George Boothby, are 5.5 seconds up the road. Now, that 5.5 seconds feels like a pretty significant amount at the moment, but it wouldn't take much in the way of battling for those gaps to close up. Meanwhile, we've also got some other penalties that come through. We've got a 5-second penalty for the number 21 car, as that belongs to... So that is Sebastian Sehentner for forcing another car off track. A 10-second time penalty for the number 15, as that has, belongs to someone that, that is Janus Reinders, that is sitting in the pits. Number 33, a stop-go 10-second time penalty for causing a collision on lap 3. That's for the number 33 car, and unsurprisingly, perhaps they are no longer in the server with us. I'm not quite sure who that was for. Number 27 has two different... we've got a warning for contact, and then what became a 10-second time penalty after a collision with the number 26 car. So that was Fabio Steyer that got that penalty, and then the number 26 then also actually received a penalty as well, a 5-second penalty for another incident, and unfortunately I can't see them in the server as it stands. Meanwhile, as we look back to our top three, you can see the margins between each of these guys at the pointy end of the field. And that Mustang has started to find just a little bit of re-emerged form, and this is where it starts to get tricky. If Philippe Menard is able to hang on to the back of that Ferrari, especially if he's close at the hairpin, he will close that gap on the run up towards Spoon. He will close it further on the run to 130R, and then he has two opportunities, both in the chicane and turn 1, to exercise an opportunity. Leon Burnt knows that, and I'll tell you what, Castorino knows that as well, and he will just be sitting there, rubbing his hands together, waiting for these guys to have some sort of form of battle, some sort of form of incident, and we'll see what takes place. We do also have a rather ambitious strategy from this man, the last man, who is to come into the pits. Currently 32 positions up from his starting place, but of course with that pit stop, with potentially some track limits to worry about as well, that's Leighton there pushing on in that Honda. We'll see how that overcut plays out for him. And the stop go 32nd for Hutchinson. How has that come about? I can't see him in the server, so I'm assuming he's retired. And I can only imagine if you've got stop go 30, because there's nothing in the steward's box, so that must be for speeding in the pit lane, I can only imagine. So I think after having a bit of a difficult day in the cockpit of that car, after getting the stop go 30-second penalty, decided to call it there. Meanwhile, Philippe Menard now with a serious opportunity. That's not a camera I want. Philippe Menard putting pressure onto Leon Burnt as our cameraman starts to get a little bit close up to those very intense beady eyes of the number 8 machine as he looks to hunt down the Ferrari 296 ahead of him. But again, through that final chicane, that Ferrari planted as you like. Go on board the rear diffuser of Philippe Menard. You can see the way that Mustang just starts to claw that time back on the run in towards the first turn, and it will continue to then pull away as they head on through the S's. It's back and forth. It's fantastic to see the dynamic. And Leon Burnt, he knew realistically that his best opportunity was likely to do this on strategy because the pace is so evenly matched across these groups. And meanwhile, Ida, Vassner, Manson, very close to one another as well. This trio, Aston Martin sandwiched between two Mustangs. Experienced drivers inside the cockpit of both those cars as well. Sasha Vassner looking like he could be trying to size up an opportunity. Does he look trying to carry that momentum through Dunlop curve? We saw Carreras try it earlier, but he's not close enough. He'll have to wait for another opportunity. He's almost pushing. He is pushing Noah Reader on the exit of Dunlop, but that Mustang just starts to find another gear as the torque starts to kick in. Through the first deck that they go. How do they fare on the exit? We saw Marco Bischoff getting a bit squirrely through here earlier on. Sasha Vassner within touching distance to try for a dive up the inside at the hairpin. He sort of shows the nose, but he doesn't quite commit to it. A little bit wide on the exit for the Mustang ahead, as Sasha Vassner will try to wait and sit for another opportunity to come his way. Sakari Leighton has finally come into pit lane then. No time on the clock left. Of course, there is a central 20-minute pit window where you must come into pit lane. As now hunting on down the rear wing, the Aston Martin building up the speed, closing that distance. He's got to be careful though of the Mustang behind. It's not all about what he sees ahead of him, although it's compromised line. Now he senses the opportunity towards outside line. Oh, that's a squeeze towards the outside of Casio Triangle. Sasha Vasta, though, has kept it very brave, and I think a little bit of a shoulder barge on the exit as well. And though, no, really, I don't quite know where he came from, to be honest. I thought he was in the gravel. He's somehow still in the fight, but now I think there's these two Mustangs will be working together as Alvin Manson, I think, will be looking to give a little bit of a helping hand to the Mustang ahead of him as he tries to find a move up the inside of the Aston Martin. Everyone's trying to go for the over and under in towards turn 2, but the Sasha Vasta in the Aston might have just about done it. How has he weaved his way through there? But the German driver has found the opportunity in the gap. No reader. I don't know if he'll have anything to say about what we think was maybe a bit of contact through the exit for chicane. Now there's quite a contact. That's going to be more in his mind, as unfortunately the man that was actually trying to help him through the whole sequence just nudges into the back and causes him to go around. He gets going again, as then we've got Vanty Barrett, got Nuremberg out to go very, very defensive. Got Lucas Roder, no reader immediately back on the attack. Oh dear, and that is Lucas Roder absolutely into the gravel, getting it all wrong over the apex curve. It doesn't actually lose too much track time. It continues on as it stands, but what a fight we have had here in the mid-pack. Like I say, in the Case King Pro Series, the margins, no matter where you look at the field, there's always some fantastic action going on. Meanwhile, Timo Karppinen, of course, he started P2, then had that battle on the opening lap, saw him drop P4, then spun around, we think, unfortunately on his own accord, at the hairpin, and now has been trying to make his way up back through the order. We know he has good pace inside that Bentley, although I think it's taken, I say a little bit of damage, I think it's taken quite a hefty few hits after being collected by certain cars after his incident, but he is still trying to find a way on through. As in the chat, that's so everyone enjoying the incredible racing that we have had going on. And the Bentley definitely has seen a few better days. It's not quite as shiny as I think the British outfit previously was earlier on in this race. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long when it was in that pristine condition, as he hop, skips and jumps all over those curbs. And we'll see what he can look to do. And also, we do have some progress being made by Mr. George Boothby, who, whilst he had invalidated that last lap, so he's got to be careful about track limits, did set the fastest lap of the race, and importantly, he was 0.8 of a second quicker than nearly everybody ahead of him. And that 5.6 second gap is now coming on down to 3.3. There's 18 minutes, excuse me, left on the clock. Philippe Menard getting more and more racy around the rear end of that Ferrari 296 that sits in front of him. And George Boothby in full push mode, trying to see if he can catch up to this pack, and he'll be hoping that this battle ahead starts sooner rather than later, because it does look like the British driver, who has contested for this championship so many times, is in a very strong position right now in terms of raw pace. But the question will be, will he have enough time to do something about it? Well, there may be some shenanigans about to kick place, because keep an eye on that number 8 car, because Philippe Menard, you can see he was gaining there, flashing lights. That's just a distraction. He's saying, I'm here. Watch out for me, buddy, because he is really starting to apply the pressure. Castorino seemingly has dropped a little bit away over the past couple of laps, but Philippe Menard not quite able to build up that much momentum in towards 130R. Had to lift a bit early, otherwise he was going to be square on the gearbox of that Ferrari. And he starts again as Leon Burt snaking his way down the start-finish straight, trying to break that toe, and the gap there down to 0.2 of a second. A wider sweeping line from the Ferrari that we sit on board with, and staring back at that menacing Ford Mustang. Those cars, they didn't have the greatest of times last week at Watkins Glen in those wet conditions. They were struggling, but we knew that on top speed that they were monstrously fast. and they are looking to do that just once again. Meanwhile, further down the order, a bit of scrapping going on here. Getting very busy behind Luke Whitehead as Campanella, Delfanta, Bischoff, Walsingham and Carrecas all very close to one another. I think Luke Whitehead could be in a little bit of trouble here. Has been closed in on by these cars over the last few laps. For the Manor, small mistake for him, and that's allowed Castorino to join along, immediately close that gap up again, though you can see at the hairpin, the 296 will get on the power, and initially will start to pull away, but then as we climb and ascend this exceptional race circuit here in Suzuka, that gap just closes and closes and closes. It goes down to less than half of what it was at the hairpin, and this is the closest that Philippe Manard has been in a long time. It's all about keeping it tidy through this exit here. Now, this time, does he decide to stick with it? Does he decide to stay foot flat to the floor? Because he built up a huge amount of momentum. He lifts. He knows that if they go side by side, it's dangerous, and Castorino is ready and waiting to pounce and attack. And whilst it's one thing to close that distance for a potential overtake, it's a whole other kettle of fish in order to actually go for it. He absolutely mounts the curbs through the Casio triangle, gets back on the power and loses 0.3 of a second in the process, if not more. And the Ferrari once again scuffled away and gets into safety. And that Aston Martin and Castorino looking equally menacing as it stands at the moment. Do not rule out the reigning champion. He's a reigning champion for a reason. As they fly on through into the S's. Twin turbocharged V8 burbling its way on through. Fantastic noises on board this car. I think maybe a potential move, not quite. Walsingham hunting around the back end of Marco Bischoff, but can't quite put it together. Of course, two identical bits of machinery sometimes makes it tricky to find those opportunities. And George Boothby really is rocking up behind these guys at an absolute rate of knots. 2.1 seconds is the gap now. He was 0.9 of a second quicker than your race leaders. 3 more laps at that pace, and Boothby's in this fight with 8 minutes and about 4 laps left to go. Do not rule out this man. He knows how to win races. He's the winningest driver in Case King Pro Series history for a reason. And it's going to be a very, very interesting fight to see how it progresses all the way to the end of this one. A little bit of skating from these cars. Hopefully we can more or less survive to the end of what has been an absolutely incredible race so far. Bischoff, Walsingham and Carrecas close to one another. You can see those gaps, half a second or so between each of these cars as they make their way on through. And Kylo, that's adding a turbocharger mean you can't build proper engines. That's well, I certainly think that some of the cars in the field would tend to agree with you. And meanwhile, we look towards the big burbly V8 Ford power, the closest that Philippe Manard has been. But again, it's the run through the final chicane, although that was a lot tidier than what he had before. And now there's potentially a serious opportunity and threat, and this is what Boothby wants, this is what he needs, because Leon Byrne is going to have to go defensive here towards the inside line. Philippe Manard sent to the outside, he then ducks back towards the inside line, he can't find a way through. He thought about it, he was trying to go for that Daniel Ricciardo-esque switchback, but all the time that these guys start to scrap for positions, George Boothby will be rubbing his hands together and saying, thank you very much, lads. Don't mind if I get stuck into this, will you? Because there he is. He's in shot. He is very much within shot. And he is continuing to progress on up to the back of these cars. That time the margin was about half a second gain. So maybe those tyres starting to drop off just a little bit for the number 2 car, but he really is on a charge here, and he is very much going to be a key player in this fight inside the top 3, and he's got a car underneath him that can make overtakes happen. Although Philippe Manard, he's having a bit of a struggle, make an example of that, but really it does seem like both Manard and Castorino are the drivers on the move inside the top 3. Leon Byrne struggling somewhat as George Boothby continues to lurk all the time. 12 minutes on the clock and what looks to be a 4-way fight. 12 followers away from that milestone as Philippe Manard, there's the dive, there's the pressure, there's a little bit of of contact in the process as well. It's come even sooner than we thought. The threat of George Boothby, I think, causing these guys to start to panic slightly. And George Boothby is going to get a very interesting view between Castorino and Leon Burton, now down to 130 off. Philip Manara has muscled his way on through. We'll have to see whether or not the stewards have anything to say about that. But how do these two fare? This is going to be brave. This is going to be scary. George Boothby may be able to capitalise on it all. And he's there in the thick of the action now. Philip Manara trying to break away. George Boothby knows if he wants a race win, he needs to make these positions sooner rather than later. Otherwise, Manara may have the car to escape away from the two behind him that have that extra bit of distance that's stopping the Mustang that we're on board with from really being able to surmount a challenge. But it's all kicked off here then at Suzuka in the final few minutes. George Boothby lurking in towards turn one, but unable to find an opportunity. He's got so much peso in that car, and I do have a feeling that he'll be at least on the podium. How far he goes up from there, though, we'll have to wait and see. And Walsingham again trying to make his way past Marco Bischoff, but the Mustang is just a bit too equal and a bit too competent at keeping that car behind. As they continue on through into the S's, they go, winding the speed and the pace up. And Philip Manara has broken just a little bit away. Bit of a different line there from Grant Correctus. Maybe trying to build some extra momentum through the sequence. He just can't find a way on through. And we'll see, will there be a penalty handed out to the race leader for that contact? Will it be classed as a bit of a push to pass scenario? It is under investigation. Of course, because it not only led to the loss of one place, it led to the loss of two. And we'll see what the conclusions are. And I think it's going to put things in a bit of a tricky spot, although not quite as much of a tricky spot as that for Marco Bischoff. He's made a mistake, unusual mistake from the two-time Pro Series champion, as he now winds his way up the hill alongside Aidan Walsingham. He's been trying to dispatch all of this Team Nitro car for a long, long time up the inside of the same corner we saw our leaders come together with. A little bit of a barge, but I don't think any contact, just leaving him very little racing room. Grant Correctus will try to sneak up the inside, but Mustang Power surely will start to be able to bring that towards the number one car in the server, and it does by a huge amount. There's nothing that he can do, but what I can say is that with the investigation it stands at the moment, it has been dished out and served. Philip Manara has a 5-second time penalty, and it's game on for the three cars behind him. And right now it's George Boothby trying to go for the move on Leon Burns, the freshest tyres of the group versus the oldest, and he tried to go for the over and under, but he can't make it stick. 9 minutes left on the clock. It will be 4 laps, including this one. Excuse me, actually 5 laps, including this one, as we head towards the closing stages of this race, trying to see whether or not he has enough margin of performance, but he doesn't have to worry about Philip Manara escaping out the road. Castorino, the reigning champion, doesn't even have to worry about making his way past the number 8 car. The only thing that he needs to really contend with right now is, will George Boothby make his way on past that Ferrari? Because if he does, that's a big threat for the Aston Martin. Castorino, he's won so many races in recent times. He's delivered consistent podium finishes as well, and he'll be looking to try to bounce back from what was a little bit of a disappointing opener for season 15 for the reigning champ. But I'll tell you what, George Boothby is looking very menacing indeed, and will be looking to spoil that party. This is where it all was fireworks just a couple of moments ago, and George Boothby looking to do the same, but he's not quite so aggressive this time around. He's just showing the nose, but he really is there, and I would have to think he's going to have to make a move in a moment. Otherwise, Castorino may just have a little bit too much time, especially sitting in the toe of that Mustang a half ahead of him. But here comes George Boothby. He's heading towards the outside line. He is going to try it. That's going to be mightily brave from the man that's the winningest driver in Pro Series history, but he can't make it stick. And Leon Burns is holding on as best as he can onto that position. And Castorino is praying that the number 25 car keeps that hard-charging Mustang behind for as long as he possibly can. But again, it's going to be a big run out of the final corner. And here comes the Mustang. It builds up a huge amount of momentum. The inside line will be taken. Maybe it won't be, because George Boothby has found a way to the inside and is very close on the braking zone. And there's contact again. Argy-bargy all once more. But George Boothby goes up into P3. And now he sets off in charge and in sight of what will be the race lead. If there's no penalty applied for that one, we'll have to see what the stewards have to say on that. But George Boothby, now 2 seconds is the gap to Castorino. Previously, his margin of advantage was about half a second apiece. Although Castorino, you have to wonder right now, being maybe bottlenecked a little bit by Philip Mannar. How much more has George Boothby got to give under the bonnet of that number 2 Mustang? He has just a handful of laps left remaining, and they continue to push on. But even if George Boothby does get to the rear of Castorino, he is being towed along by the Mustang ahead, and that's going to make it increasingly tricky. I'm sure Castorino, he'll want to win this on track as well, and he may need to win it on track if he is to protect himself from that Mustang behind, because that gap is continuing to come on down. And we'll see as the number 2 and the number 25 car, so those instants, we've had one no further action come on through, and we're waiting for the conclusion of, I believe, what we saw at turn 1. George Boothby is giving it absolutely everything. He's the winningest driver in Pro Series history for a reason, and he is absolutely giving it full beans. He went for that overcut strategy, knowing it would put him in this position at the end of the race. So when the fireworks hit at the front of the field, that he'd have the best tyres of anybody. His tyres are about 12 minutes newer than the cars ahead. But he doesn't have to worry about Philip Mannar. It's just all eyes on what he can do about the Aston Martin of Amedeo Castorino as they look to cross the line once more. It's a 2-minute point 2 for Castorino. And with that battling that Boothby had, it's a 2-minute point 3, but the gap down to 1.8 seconds. 5 minutes left on the clock, 3 more laps to go. And it's going to be absolutely foot to the floor for George Boothby. It may all come down to the final lap as they continue to scrap away to the end. An absolutely incredible race that we have had so far this evening at Suzuka. The Pro Series always putting on an absolutely incredible show. With these final 4.5 minutes left to go, I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Who do you think it's going to go to? Do you think Castorino is going to be able to hold on? And could George Boothby look to close that gap and try to add another victory to his tally? Mustang or Aston Martin? I would love to know how you think it's going to go in these closing stages, because Boothby is pushing. It's another 3/10, but he's taken out of the number 4 car that sits up ahead of him. But his time is running out, and his time and opportunities to make an overtake are going to get more and more difficult. He closes that gap because the dirty air is not quite as prevalent as it is in other series, but it certainly is a factor that they have to contend with. Meanwhile, Aiden Walsingham trying to make his way on by the Honda of Eric Del Fanta, last week's race winner, this time having to try to settle for something inside the top 10. At the moment it's P8, but in a second it could be P9. Walsingham tries to go down the inside. Oh, Del Fanta goes very, very wide. Walsingham says thank you very much, and Karekas isn't minding joining in on the action as well, trying to then hop into the tow of his ex-teammate. The Mustang won't look to particularly help him out there, but the Ferrari has got the move done unless Eric Del Fanta can look to close the gap, but he can't. And I think that is Karekas on through up into P9 then, as we look towards the front of the field. Less than half a second separates Castorino to the back of Philip Mannar, who of course will drop off the podium with that 5-second time penalty. But it all starts to make its way to the closing stages of this race. Just a couple of laps left to go, and George Boothby again half a second quicker than the cars ahead. If he does it once more, the gap will be just a matter of 3/4 of a second. And if he continues that pace to the end of the lap, we know there's opportunities in the final sector for this Mustang. It could all come down to the very last corner. George Boothby is on a charge here. and he could certainly be looking to go one step better if he puts it all together and delivers a sort of drive that we know this man can do. You could never rule him out of any scenario. Neither can this one. Grant Korekkas down 3 positions in this race after that unfortunate early laps and opening parts of this 60 minutes. But he is scrapping away with Walsingham. Del Fanta still hanging on to the gearbox of that Ferrari as well. We've got another little squabble going on down here. Carpenter trying to continue his recovery up through the order. Has the inside line. It's going to turn into the outside by the time they get to the first deck. There, can he go for the over and under? The Bentley trying to make it one more, and he does indeed. An absolutely beautifully set up sequence. He'll be frustrated at how today has played out because he clearly had great pace in that Bentley, but mistake at this very part of the circuit, all self-inflicted, took him out of the equation for the race win. But he's still moving his way back up the order. Korekkas, Del Fanta, 0.3 of a second away from the cars ahead. As meanwhile, your race leaders starting the final lap now. George Boothby, he is within a second of Castorino. That gap will start to close and continue to close down the start-finish straight. But is he going to run out of time? It's really going to be a do-or-die final lap for George Boothby if he wants to come away with the race win. Castorino, the reigning champion, knows how to close these races out. He's so often patient and calm behind the wheel of Aston Martin. It's what he did time and time again, but the advantage is not with him at the moment. He's bottled behind Philip Mannar in that P2 spot, and all the meantime, the Mustang that is lurking and getting bigger and bigger in the rear view mirrors of his car is starting to increase that pressure. But through the opening sector, the Mustang, that's where it's going to tend to be its weakest, but that's where it starts to change in the dynamic. Where can George Boothby look to try to make up the time? How hard does he push? Castorino absolutely all over the tail of the Mustang that was been leading for so much of his race. Leon Burt then went into the lead on Strachey with the undercut, but contact between himself and Philip Mannar saw him taken out of the equation. Philip Mannar, with that 5-second time penalty, is going to effectively end up out of this fight for these podium positions. In fact, I'm not even sure we'll stay inside of the top 4. Could be very close. He may actually finish P4, I believe. But it's one final stretch of road and slipstream for George Boothby. The gap is less than a second, but by the looks of the Aston Martin, especially with that toe up ahead, is going to potentially have just about enough. George Boothby can see it's absolutely meters away from him, but I just don't think he's quite got enough margin to work with here. They fly on through 130R for the final time. In towards the Casio triangle they go. Suzuka has done it once again, delivering the action in absolute bucket loads. Philip Mannar will be the man to cross the line on the circuit in P1, but it's going to go the way of the reigning champion, Amedeo Castorino, by just less than half a second, who wins here at Suzuka. George Boothby with the charge at the end, misses out by 0.3. Leon Byrne will take a podium, a still a very, very well-earned position there. He will, of course, be very frustrated. Michael Moning, an exceptional drive from him, and I'm sure those supporting this chap will be delighted. He's celebrating in style in that Mustang as he finishes what will be P5, I believe. Philip Mannar goes down to P4 as we head on through the order. Other battles continue. Valentin Barrier misses out. Lucas Roda half a second behind Norita Carpenter in tow, but they're going to run out of time and stay as they were. And then the final fight going all the way to the end. McCoskey sending one from down on the inside of Daniel Solon. But I believe Daniel Solon is going to hold on to it. I think also your Jardier trophy for today goes to Samir Foch with 12 positions gained. Solon very nearly managing to take it from the back of the grid. But Samir, with that interestingly liveried car, is going to be the one to take that result. They all look to make their way to the line. Veet Shorka and Fabio Steyer, your last 2 cars to head to the line. But what an evening of action we have had here at round number 2 of the K-Skin Pro Series. It is always absolute chaos, beautiful chaos that we have in this championship, and so much drama in every possible way that you can imagine. But in the end, it goes down to the very final lap, and George Busby missing out by a very small margin. But I think on the back of last week, he's still going to be pretty happy and content with getting himself back into podium spots. Initially, early doors in this race, it maybe looked like he was a little bit removed from those top three, but with strategy, with experience, he got himself stuck into the fight, and one more lap, it could have been very, very different. Fantastic racing from each and every one of those drivers. We will look to bring them in for interviews very, very shortly. Hopefully, if they do hop along with us, an interesting series of perspectives, I'm sure, from each of the drivers in that race. I cannot wait to get their thoughts. And apparently Michael Moning had 3 warnings for 35 minutes of that race as well. So really pushing it to the extreme and the limits. But a fantastic top 5 performance from the Mustang driver this evening. Great stuff from him. We've got George Busby waiting and Amadeo in the interview room. We'll wait and see if Leon Burnt does look to hop in for a chat as well. Of course, a man that I'm sure is going to be feeling a bit hard done by today. He did everything right on strategy. He was under pressure in those closing stages, but a rather aggressive move from Philip Manar with that 5-second time penalty meant that despite the Mustang taking the first place spots on track, will have been demoted, I believe, to what will be P4 when everything comes on through. Although, unfortunately, I think because of my various results shenanigans and my internet shenanigans for this evening, I'm not quite sure if I'll actually be able to see the full result sheet, I'm afraid. But I shall try my best to run you all through what we have had from this exceptional evening of action as we continue on. And I think by the looks of it and that absence of a Leon Burnt from P3, that I don't think we're going to have the Ferrari driver joining us, but still congratulations to him for what was still a very well constructed race from the German driver and a well executed strategy, and a P3 spot in the Case King Pro Series. The top split of this wonderful championship is still a very commendable result. So a lot of positives for him to take away from today, even if of course not quite the result that he would have wanted to end on for this evening. But we will look to bring in the man that was on the charge at the closing stages of that race. Closing from P4 all the way to that fight between the top 3. It was all fireworks at the end, and that overcut really started to bring you into the mix, George. Maybe with one more lap, it could have gone a different way and had you on the top spot of the podium. But after that immense charge, how are you feeling after that one?
I'm feeling great because I haven't really put much time into this round, so I was a bit nervous, and I'm always a little bit off at Suzuka, so but no, I had a good pace. I was really surprised. I think quali maybe didn't show my true potential because I sort of learned more as the race went on, and yeah, I just did a massive overcut, fueled a lot more than the others to think maybe I can send it at the end, and yeah, I was able to catch up, and at about, I'd say 6 or 7 laps to fight them. I managed to get the Ferrari, but it just maybe 1 or 2 more laps and I could have done something more, but it is what it is. I'm happy to still get P2.
Yeah, it was a monstrous charge back towards that group at the front. And I'm sure that you were praying for that fighting and squabbling to kick off a little bit sooner than it did, so it could bring you into that fight. But that Mustang, my goodness, we've seen for 2 weeks in a row now, the straight line speed potential of that car is absolutely monstrous, compared to nearly anything else on the grid. How important was that for you when you were entering those fight situations to give you that overtaking potential?
Oh yeah, like that's the main thing about this car. Obviously it's new, so it's quite popular. I thought it'd be a bit more popular, to be honest, but it is what it is. But yeah, it's a new car, and then obviously it's got this immense straight line speed. Now, some people are a bit annoyed with it, and I definitely see why. But hey, it's what it is. If you can't beat them, join them. So if I can be like one of the top forwards each round, that's my aim.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, last week was a bit of a trickier time for, sort of a lot of our usual championship protagonists towards the pointy end of the field. You came P10 at Watkins Glen, but bouncing back to sort of more typical form of where we tend to see you, George, with a fantastic P2 finish today. Now, from what I understand, of course, because we had this ongoing vote for next week's round, for the 3rd round of the championship, where it was between Silverstone and Barcelona, the conclusion conclusion from that vote was Silverstone. So I'm interested to get your perspective on how you think that Mustang may perform there, or if it's a little bit of a vague one up in the air.
England, you know what I mean? Silverstone, home track. I'm going to send it, you know? Hopefully I have the home track advantage. That's always a few tenths. And yeah, I'm happy with that result. Let's go.
Absolutely, of course. It was only a few tenths that separated you from victory today, so perhaps with that little bit of spurred-on momentum at the home track, that it might give you just what you need to return to a top step on the podium. George, congratulations on an amazing drive today around here at Suzuka, and thank you for hopping in for an interview, and look forward to seeing how you get on next week at Silverstone.
Oh, thank you so much. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers, George. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic stuff there to hear from George Boothby. Now, before we do actually head over to our winning man, Leon Burns has come on in for an interview. And Leon, first of all, congratulations on what was overall still a tremendously put together race from your side. You were patient in the opening stint. You executed the undercut strategy beautifully to get that track position. And then, unfortunately, that scrap with Philip in the second half of the race, taking you out of that fight for the win. I imagine that there's some disappointment from you, but still plenty of positives to be very proud of from today.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed that I couldn't get the win today. But in the end, P3 is also a very good finish. And if we look on the championship, I think consistency is key there. And not just win one round, but go in the top 5 or maybe top 3 in every round. So yeah, I could live with that. But yeah, in the end, was quite unlucky. I think Philip would have got me anyway in the end because the Ford is just way stronger on the straight and I couldn't defend.
Yeah, it's obviously that, there's a very big dynamic difference between kind of where you were finding pace in that Ferrari versus where the Mustang, really shines at, various points around the circuit with that huge amount of straight line speed. And we saw in the opening half of the race, it looked like you were able to kind of hold on to your tyres a little bit better than Philip was able to. And I thought that, with the gap that you sort of opened up a little bit at the beginning of the second stint as well, that was going to put you in a position where you could just kind of maintain that gap towards the end of the race and then limit that pressure from behind from the Mustang. Do you think, was there something that changed over the course of the race that made the Mustang come back a little bit stronger? What was it that you think allowed Philip to gain some of that time back towards you?
Yeah, I thought the same actually when I pitted and came out in front. But I don't know what happened really to my rear tires. In practice, all was fine. I did 40 minutes at the beginning because this was my planned strategy from the beginning on. Yeah, but in the end, my tires completely overheated, and maybe that's because I practiced at 1 degree less, and therefore the tires had like 2 degrees more in the race today. But yeah, I have to look at it. What happened there? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it is all very small margins in this championship, and those tiny little finesse details, of course, can make the difference. But as you say, still, great consistency over the first couple of rounds of the season. We saw for Amadeo last season, that was what was able to give him the championship title in the end. Next week, we'll be heading to Silverstone, where, of course, a circuit where there's going to be a lot of high-speed corners, where your Ferrari, I think, would be pretty handy, but it's a very high-speed circuit as well, so those Mustangs could be once again strong. Any thoughts, feelings from your side as to whether or not you'll be able to contend for the race win once again when we head over there for the third round?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't drive Silverstone for like a year now, so let's see.
Fantastic stuff. Leon, commiserations on what, like I say, was a fantastic overall result today still, but I understand your disappointment from that one. Still an immensely commendable drive from your side and some valuable points banked in for the championship. So certainly not over and done with for your season just yet. A lot to be very proud of and take forward. So best of luck heading into Suzuka next week and look forward to seeing how you get on.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, Leon. Take care. Great stuff to talk to the man that finished P3 on track in the end. Of course, slightly deflated Leon Byrne there in the Ferrari. You can understand why after the closing stage of the race. So close to being able to take his maiden win in the Case King Pro Series. But a man that has become somewhat familiar with the podium and also the top step of it at that. Amedeo Castorino, the reigning champion of the Pro Series, delivering another beautifully crafted performance. Patience in the first half of the race, picking the positions off as and when they mattered, and then keeping it all under control in those final few minutes whilst George Boothby was bearing down you. Amedeo, welcome back to the Cosbox and congratulations on another win. You must be pretty happy about that one.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. I'm pretty happy about this win. Like, was probably more emotional than win the championship again because it was completely unexpected that win tonight because I wasn't thinking my pace was that good tonight, and I just made all perfect and like take the gift of the other one, from other drivers that made mistake. Basically, what let me win tonight was doing all perfect. Like quali, I don't made my personal best, but just 1/10 off from my best lap, and in this track it's pretty hard to nail the quali. It was quite unlucky also because just if I made 30,000 better, I was starting like P1 and not P4, but it is what it is. And then I like gained the position on Karpinen after the contact in turn 1, so I was P3, and then I was just like chilling behind Bernd and Minar. But I mean, I was also pushing because I don't have much pace than them. I was like really pushing for stay with them. Then I put also not enough fuel for the race, so I have to pit pretty soon anyway. And then also on the second part, I know Butby was coming, so didn't want to fight too much with Bernd and Minar. Also because I never had a like chance to fight with them for real. And then like I saw just their moment on the spoon. Luckily I carried the momentum for overtake Bernd, and that was like the key for win the race basically at the end. And luckily, the race was 1 hour and 1 hour and 2 minutes because with one more lap, I had to fight probably with Butby on the last lap on the last chicane. It's never a thing that you want. Like, you want as a spectator, but not as a driver. You want, like, easy win. It's better.
Yeah, as I must admit, rather selfishly, from my perspective, and I think those watching on as well, we were eager to see what would happen if George did manage to close up that gap just a little bit further. But, like you say, the race was indeed 60 minutes long, and you did everything you needed to keep it all under control. A masterfully crafted race there. And also, really interesting, dynamic as well, because we saw the Mustang had incredible straight line speed, the Ferrari very good through all the corners. It kind of felt like your Aston Martin was, somewhere between the two. Decent straight line speed, but not Mustang levels. And again, able to, manage its tires, perform well through a lot of the high-speed twisty stuff. Was that kind of how it felt in the car, or was it just, or was that really not on your mind too much? It was just concentrating, trying to hold on to the guys up ahead.
It felt like exactly as you said, because when I was behind Bernd, like I was the Ford and he was the Aston basically. Then when I was behind the Ford, I feel like the Ferrari. Like I was completely impossible to gain something on the Ford. I was still losing on the slipstream with Aston, that it's pretty fast on the straight, but he was struggling a lot especially on the first snake and on the 130R. I probably on 130R was the fastest car, the Aston, even faster than the Ferrari. I was pretty fast in that corner, and that could help for try and overtake, but never had the chance. But yeah, it is like that.
Yeah, and in the end, other than capitalizing on those moments that came your way, which you did so beautifully, you didn't need to quite find out if you needed to have that extra overtaking potential into the final chicane, which I imagine came as a bit of a relief for yourself. But yeah, a wonderfully put together race from yourself. Heading over to Silverstone for the third round of the season. Of course, a 90-minute race as well, so that tends to mean, those aspects of tyre wear and, overall kind of race management become that ever little bit more critical than what we see in these 60-minute races. Any thoughts, feelings as to how you may be in the mix for that one?
Luckily, for what I remember, the temperature should be colder, so that's good for the Aston, I would say. I don't know, I'm not racing on Silverstone from a lot of time, but it's another track where it's very hard to do overtakes, probably even harder than... I mean, you can try something, but it's always very hard. So I don't know what to expect. So I don't know. We will see. Like the target is always doing something like top 5, like old season. And at the end, the start of the season was also very similar to the old one because on the old season I started first race P8, second race P2, this time P11, P1. So if this is the way to start, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, well, based upon how the rest of the season went for you last time around, this sees you on a pretty good trajectory going into season 15. So we'll have to see how it plays out over the next 10 rounds. But, of course, banking in these points, banking in these victories on the times that they do come your way, it's so important to do that, to deliver those totals for the end of the season. Amadeo, fantastic stuff today. Big congratulations on adding another race win to your ever-increasing tally and putting on a stellar show for us here at Suzuka. And we look forward to seeing how you get on at Silverstone next week.
Yeah, thank you. Have a
Cheers,
good night,
Amadeo.
guys.
Take care. Fantastic stuff there to speak to the reigning champion and the man that stood on the top step of the podium today, albeit a driver that was perhaps slightly surprised to find himself up there, not feeling like he quite had the pace at times to contend with those at the very front of the pack. But in the end, patience was key, consistency was key, and Amadeo, as we know from Season 14, his championship-winning performance is absolutely that written in the sky. So he has lived up to his expectation and reputation on that front, and it's delivered the goods for him once again. But an amazing race from start to finish. Like I say, unfortunately, I do not have the result sheet that I could run you through as a weird net woe and consequence of my technical Wi-Fi and internet-related difficulties for today. But thankfully, more or less, other than a couple of moments, we survived, which is a bit of an early Christmas miracle. To be honest, fingers crossed, we'll be in a bit of a better state and position by the time we get to Silverstone next week. But an incredible evening of action, and a big thank you to all of those that followed and also those that subscribed to the channel over the course of the stream. All of that support is absolutely wonderful, and it's a pleasure to have you all here. And on that note, if you have enjoyed the action that you saw tonight, do consider giving the channel a follow as we work ever closer to that 4,000 follower milestone, and you can stay in touch and in tune with all the action that is to come with the Case King Pro Series. And of course, if you perhaps joined this race a little bit late and you fancy seeing all that took place and led to these incredible battles, you can also head over to our YouTube channel as well and give that a subscription as well. If you do want to show a little bit of extra support to the Hidden Heroes that make all of this possible, you can also subscribe here on the channel. It does all very much help make this championship as big, brilliant, and beautiful as we can. And those that do that, a big extra thanks goes to you. But like I say, having all of you here just to join in on this amazing series and share all of this sim racing goodness is very much all I could possibly ask for, and a big thank you to all of you. If you have been enjoying the action, you fancy having a little bit of a dabble behind the wheel yourself, never fear, because you can head over to the lowfuelmotorsport.com website. You can get yourself a license, you can work your way up through the ranks, and you can join the championships like the Case King Pro Series, competing for those incredible prizes that we were discussing earlier on in the stream. And of course, you can also get involved with the daily racing. There's endurance, there's duo goodness, all sorts of shenanigans that you can get involved in for all of your sim racing interests. And of course, if maybe ACC isn't quite your cup of tea, you can also head over to AC1, the Assetto Corsa. The original, the OG of sim racing is on the LFM platform and is delivering bucket loads of fun for you to get stuck into, so you have a bit of a variety over there as well. Lots of good stuff to enjoy there. Then you can also join the WRC Championship Club on that as well, and maybe have a couple more collisions with trees every now and again. But it's a good bit of fun. I highly recommend it. And of course, if you just want to be a part of this ever-growing, amazing community, share all good things, sim racing, real racing, pictures of your dogs, your cats, anything you like, and just be welcomed in to a very friendly community. Then, of course, also do head over to our Discord server as well. It'd be wonderful to have you all over there too, to share all of this fun together going forward into what is, of course, a very bright future. But from Suzuka today, then, that is going to be it. Amadeo Castorino, the reigning champion, rises to the top step of the podium once again. We'll be heading to Silverstone for 90 minutes of your voted action. The very first time that we've done that in the Pro Series, and we'll have to see, has your vote made what could potentially be a championship deciding track? We'll have to wait and see, but I'm sure one way or another it is going to deliver the action in buckets. So do not miss it. Look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible for the third round of the season of the Case King Pro Series. It is going to be a cracker. But for this evening, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and it's goodbye.